Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Campbell. I'm a doula in Washoe County, Nevada, a Medicaid provider, a lactation educator, childbirth educator, and mom of 18. You can find me and connect on doulainreno.com. Remember, give a shout out to those who are brave enough to share their stories with us on how they have become parents. Let's dive in. Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I am really excited. I've been looking forward to this podcast episode. I'm on with Ashley Mareko. Did I say your name right?
Pretty close. Ashley Mareko. Yeah. It's
Mareko.
Samoan. Yeah.
Oh, it's Samoan. Oh, see, I don't
Yeah.
have that accent I don't have any accent at all, but that's why. I want you to jump in because this story is going to be really outstanding and start sharing your parenting journey with us.
Yeah. So my parenting journey started in senior year of high school. Actually, it would have been junior year, but I was graduating a year early, anyways. And I found myself 16 and single and pregnant and at a Planned Parenthood, where they were like, "Hey, there's options." And I was like, no, I thought I was grown. I'm gonna have to, I'm going through this. I thought I was old enough. I got to deal with these consequences. And so my son Ezekiel came at 16. Yeah. And then
16.
16. Yeah. So I graduated high school, and a month later, delivered him.
Wow. I mean, well, first of all, I want to jump in because I graduated in 1988. So this was like dinosaurs were roaming the earth then.
Yeah.
But when I was a junior in high school in that 86, 87 year,
Hmm.
um, one of my friends, Rose, was pregnant. And I remember how people treated her horribly. And I stuck up for her as much as I knew how to at the time, which was probably great and not great at the same time. But she stayed in school.
Hmm.
She had her baby the end of our junior year. She came back and finished senior year. I was so proud of her. If you're going to make the decision, because look, you have three choices, right? Abortion, adoption, and being a mom. That's
Yeah.
it. And I was proud that she made the decision, a tough decision to keep the baby. And then
Yeah.
she stayed in school, which I mean, I remember kids giving her a hard time. And I looked at this group of kids and I said, the only difference between her and you is that she got caught and you
That's
haven't yet.
exactly it. Yes.
Okay. So I can only imagine how hard that is to be pregnant. You were lucky, I guess, that you graduated a year early because you graduated and had a baby a month later.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
like exactly. I remember walking the line like May 26th or something and delivering him June 27th. Yeah.
holy cow, Ashley. I mean, so
Yeah.
you stayed in school. What was that like?
I was over high school I was always a hustler. So I found ways to sell candy in school, and I had been applying for colleges. I wanted to get out. I wanted to make money. I thought high school was a waste of time. For me, I was like, I'm not getting paid to be here 8 hours. Like, so to me, I thought I'm just gonna keep going. I was a leader in our church group. And I remember having to step down, right? I was
Yep.
the last one in my group to lose my virginity, the first one to get pregnant. I thought I was going to get married and we were going to be a family. I came from a broken home, a survivor of all the abuses, and my brothers and sisters, we share four dads, and so I wanted to be a parent who had one person, and it was going to be it, and the only way out was going to be the grave. And I said, "Hey, I'm pregnant," and he said, "Hey, I've been cheating on you," and left. And so I found myself at
Oh,
16. The good thing is that I had a lot of anger growing up, and so I used that of I'm going to prove you all wrong. Um, and so I got a doula for the pregnancy. She offered her services for free. She wanted to make sure I was supported. My dad was there for the birth, so I had those support systems in place. My mom was too, but I've always been a dad girl. Um, I was in and out of foster care at that point and delivered him. And a couple months later, we both went into foster care. So, but I had foster parents that allowed me to raise my child. So I got to raise my child. I made the decisions on him for the first couple months we were in. And I think we got out around 8 months. He was 8 months old. And I had been working and caring for him, and I wasn't 18 yet. But my mom, I think there was some details, but she didn't want me to age out of the system just because
okay.
it would go on her record. And so I got out, and at 17, I was renting a
Mm.
room from somebody and I couldn't get any like welfare benefits because I was under 18. So I just worked and had him in a daycare and made sure I paid that bill and ate ramen and chicken nuggets for a while until I met my future husband. But we made it. We did good. You know, my son's 22 now. Like he's amazing. He survived.
I mean, I had my first at 21 and it was planned. I went through infertility. I was married really young and still I can't believe she made it out. So, I mean, I think one of the
Yeah.
things to remember for parents listening out there, like I thought, oh, if I did it better than my parents, which look, that it was way to set the bar, like I wanted to do a better job and I wanted my kids to know how important they were and how loved. And I really hope that I did that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter if you loved it and chose it and try every day, you're screwing up your kids.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I know that. And,
So, yeah, not that I think, oh, well, gonna screw them up anyway. Might as well just screw them up real good. But I mean, really, even with trying, I thought, I thought naively, maybe like you did, that if you just do it differently, if you just,
yeah.
that it will be okay and that it will be so much better. And it is, but still, we're all human.
Yeah, my
I
goal,
was
I think,
so
as a
young.
child, as a parent, was I wanted to protect my son so that he didn't have what happened to me, which caused me to be very hyper vigilant on
Mm,
my children. Like very fearful that something would happen to them. And I, my mistake with parenting was I wanted to teach them how hard the world was, so that they wouldn't get eaten alive. And unfortunately, I realized as an actual adult that I needed to be that safe place for them. Like the
mm,
home needed to be the safe place where they were always loved and accepted, and that, I thought the world of them. And I did, but I was so fearful that they would get eaten up by the world and become victims, that I was always trying to make them tougher, always trying to make them stronger, always trying to make them better. And I think like my son, we have a really good relationship, but I think for me, he had feelings of not being enough because I was always
oh,
trying to push him to the next level. Like, we have to get you there. We have to get you there so you don't make the same mistakes as mom. And so now as an adult, we can have great conversations and stay up till 2 and like, talk. And I've owned it. I think that was something that was hard for me, is I thought I was a good mom, but then your adult child comes to you and says like, hey mom, like you did these things and this is what affected me. And I'm like, I have to own it. Whether it's not my reality, it's his reality. I have to
yeah,
own
right.
how he's feeling. And so I think that's really like helped our relationship, for him to know like mom validates.
You said, I mean, and wait, that's a lot. That was a lot for you to go through. I'm so glad that you had supportive foster parents.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry that you had to get out early to make your mom's record better. I'm so glad that you struggled through renting a room and made it work. I mean,
Yeah.
those are really tough things. Like, good for you. I mad respect, mad. So you said that you met your future
Yes,
husband
my
there.
husband. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's how old was your son? And take us through that.
Yeah. So he was just under a year. So I,
Mm.
I got out. I started dating him. I met him when my son was almost a year old. And I, we're still together. But in the beginning, I thought, oh, this giant man is going to protect me from the world, right? Little did I know I'm the bulldog and he's the teddy bear. So it didn't quite work out that way.
Uh-huh.
I saw size and I thought, everyone's afraid of him. This is going to be great. I'm going to be respected, and he's going to protect me from all the bad people, right? And that wasn't the case. I had to be my own protection, growing up. But he was amazing. He just took on my son right at the beginning. There were fights in the beginning where he'd be like, "You leave my son and you go out," and I'm like, "Oh, that's my kid. Like, I'm taking my baby with me." So we had some like very hard times. We needed to eventually move to the mainland, and really work on our family without all of our extended family being part of the drama, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's hard when he's one of 13 and I have a very large family, and so everybody's got their opinions. They want the best, but everybody's got their opinions. And so we kind of went out into the desert of Vegas to find God and our relationship, and grow, and then dealt with infertility.
This is funny because I know what's coming. I mean, I know a little bit. This is fun. That's going to be funny later in this podcast. Stick around for this.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
went through infertility.
Yeah,
Uh,
secondary male factor. Yeah. My husband had ended up
mm,
getting diagnosed with several different like health issues, and the medication he's on wouldn't allow him, for us to be able to have a child. Um, and we had two that I had given birth to and my bonus daughter. And so we just decided, okay, we've had enough kids after a couple years of being very bitter about it. Um, and I thought, you know what? One day I remember just kind of hearing in my heart, like, you know, there's people that have no children and you're here being bitter after three, like who are you to be so bitter? And the other side of it was just like, you should be thankful for what you have. And after that, like radios and podcasts and TVs, and even a woman in like my Bible study was a surrogate. I just kept hearing surrogacy, and I was like, I can do this. I've got big hips, great childbirth. Like, I can be pregnant. Like, it's no problem. Like, I'll do this. I'm going to change the world as a surrogate.
Tell me about the three kids because I know you
Yeah.
had one. You have the secondary
Yeah.
infertility. Where did the other two kids come from?
Oh, really quickly. So my daughter, my bonus daughter, she was 6 when I met my husband, and so like we just automatically connected until the preteen years. Of being a stepmom's hard,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of like I think children struggle with like loyalty when there doesn't need to be. Like I'm not trying to take anyone's place, and so I just learned quickly in that preteen years, like I'm not going to give out privileges, but I'm not giving out disciplines either. And so
Mm-hmm.
you go to dad, which then took the whole power, struggle, and control thing away. And I just became her friend.
Mm-hmm.
She's 28. She's like my best friend. We hang out.
Mm-hmm.
I love her. And so that came. And then at 20, so 4 years after my son, we had a surprise baby Ty. Um, Ty's got all kinds of fun stuff, epilepsy, autism, like, but she's the most amazing kid. Taught me that it wasn't my parenting that made such a great kid the first time around. I thought like I looked down on parents like, oh, your children are so misbehaved, and like my son would never throw a fit or do that. He speaks sign language. Um, and then I just realized it's their souls, and I had no control over how awesome and well behaved my son was compared to my little like Tasmanian devil that come in and swept up our whole world.
Okay, so
So
you did end up having a
I
second
did.
one at 20.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have
Yeah.
three at this point, and
Yeah.
you wanted to have more, and you
I
couldn't.
so at 20, I had prayed that my womb would be closed because we were broke and in like low income housing, and our marriage wasn't going good, and I didn't like the person I was. And so I prayed that like we wouldn't have any more children until we could own a house and be successful and like have love in our marriage. And I mean, we were both pretty young, so to try to do this whole adulting thing in Hawaii and broke really sucked. And so I prayed that it would close, and then we decided, a couple years after that, like 5 years after my daughter, that we would move to Vegas and strike it rich in the nightclub industry.
Yes.
Use my husband's giant Samoan size. I was like, you're gonna make it big there, and I had a job with my current company that allowed me. I was in sales, and so it allowed me to move to Vegas and open up a fundraising, company there. So we went to Hawaii, like we went to Vegas with $1,200 and two suitcases each, and lived at the Circus for a week while we found an apartment. But it worked out.
As lots of people actually, when I moved to Reno, we did the same thing. We stayed the first week at the circus here in Reno. So that's funny. That's where people land. I think it's cheap and your kids can be entertained. So we did the same thing 19 and a half years ago.
Yeah, it was a
Crazy.
distraction. It was like, hey, look how cool Vegas is. You don't got to be sad about not being at a beach.
Yes, you do. 100% you do, but that's fine. That's a different story.
Yeah.
You guys moved to Vegas and really wanted to work
Yeah.
on your relationship. At some point with the male fertility
Yeah.
issues, the health and
Yeah.
fertility, you decided not to have kids though. So somewhere between surprise baby at
Yeah.
20 and then not being able to. And I get what you're saying, like, how can I be so bitter? I have three children and some people have none. But when you are trying to have a baby and you want to,
Oh,
regardless, it's still fertility is fertility is fertility. I think it's amazing though that you went through a fertility issue personally in your
yeah,
marriage, because moving forward when surrogacy came up, you got it. Like you understood being able to have like not being able to stop pregnancy and then not being able to start pregnancy and
yeah.
kids coming from in different unique ways because you're a stepmom. So like what a great God's funny, you know how he sets all these things up. I you've mentioned church a couple times,
Yes,
and I know when we were setting up this interview, um you were working in ministry. Well, maybe not yet,
yeah,
but, like, first of all, you had to step down from your church position when you got pregnant at 16, which okay, I
yeah,
do get that, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, but then you were working for a church because you tell me
Yes,
about
yeah,
your religious journey in your I know about the 16-year-old, but
yeah,
moving forward, because you said you guys wanted to move to, like, get God more in your life and
yeah,
put boundaries force boundaries on extended family, which I totally get. And then
yeah,
I know religion played a part in your surrogacy journey. So, can you
yeah.
tie those together?
Yeah, I can totally tie it together. So, yeah, at 16, I was part of the church. I've been, part of different Christian denominations, and I, because of my childhood and being a survivor of abuses, I had a very disconnected relationship with God. So I had a very head relationship, right? Like I knew the word, I knew what I was supposed to do. Well, previously before some, mental health help, I seeked validation. I wanted to be the best. I wanted that attention, the approval, things like that. And I could get that in church, right? I could be the best outside version of a Christian and have that head knowledge because I'm a good student. But I didn't have that heart relationship. And so as I was searching for that, I found a program called Celebrate Recovery, which is a 12-step program that's Christian based for any type of addiction.
Mm.
So for me, I was a rageaholic and have food issues. And so I started going to this, and I remember the first couple times going and thinking like these people are insane, right? Like I'm not one of them, right? And so this was in Hawaii. I went a couple times, and the problem was in a smaller group, you had someone like me who's a rageaholic with a codependent who was like my mom, and it triggered me, and I couldn't hear their hearts. It was bad for me. I was like, well, why don't you just beat him up? Like, how dare you let your husband talk to you that way, right? Like, I just had no connection.
Obviously, I'll beat
Like,
him up for you.
who chooses to be a victim, like, and I had no idea, which is completely wrong. Like, don't, that's not what I'm saying. But in my denial, I didn't see, that side. And so we got to Vegas, and within a month I found a larger church that had a Celebrate Recovery program, and I dove directly in. Like, they had a whole group of angry women, and I didn't feel so alone, like, and I didn't feel so crazy. And
Yeah.
from there was the first time I had started to actually break down the walls and have like a heart relationship with God. And so I went through that program. I then led the program. I then joined the prison ministry because there's a lot of angry women in prison, and those are my friends, And so we went through that. And then God led me into a Christian school, and and I felt like I was supposed to be there. And I thought, who is going to hire me with my anger, previous anger history, which also caused like mutual affrays when I was younger, like, which are technically just bar fights in Hawaii. We do those. And so I thought there's no way anyone's going to hire me. And I went in and I just wrote this whole essay about how I wanted to be there and how I have changed and I've been in recovery, and my heart no longer is hard like that. And they gave me a shot. It had been years, so it wasn't like a criminal that just went to go work at the school. But they gave me the job, and I just excelled in the preschool. I loved loving on these kids. I was able to heal that, some of the hurt and some of the embarrassment I had of not making the best choices with my children, right? Not being as patient as I should, not, celebrating and playing more with them. And so I did that with this group of like 16 kids, and my children got involved with it. So they would come and they'd volunteer, and my son would come and help out. And so we just really got involved with the church and with the school that I was helping with. And that's when I started to hear, that's when I was like, okay, I'm safe enough. I feel like we're financially stable. We have a good marriage. I have a good heart. Like, I want to have a child. And then it just wouldn't happen.
Mm.
And every month my period would come. And every month it would be late a couple of days, right? And then I would get my period. And so I dealt with that for probably 2 years of trying, and I'm watching everyone around me get pregnant, and I'm trying not to be bitter. And and I'm like, you gave me these kids when I was 16 and 20, and now you won't give me any kids when I'm stable. Like, like, this is my chance to redeem myself, and show that I can be the best mom possible. And um and that's kind of where I had to have some, I had to get help with that, because I had to realize, like, I've got these, like, kids are resilient. Like, when I started going through recovery, they were so quick to forgive me, and they were
Mm.
so quick to, like, trust that mom was a safe spot and that she would listen and understand. And there was a lot of crying that first year. I had never really cried in my life, and then that first year I just cried the whole year. Like, you messed up my fast food order, I couldn't get angry, right? Like, I'd lose my chips, so I'd cry. Like, like, I just cried at everything. um but that was the year. Yeah, that was the year I felt like I was going to be okay. And then instead, what I realized is God allowed me, and he trusted me so much that he trusted me with someone else's baby, right? To grow their
Mm.
baby, not just my child. And that's kind of where I got into surrogacy. Was I had this crazy lady who became my best friend in my church group, who was, I'm like, congratulations. She's like, it's not mine. I'm like, what kind of wizardry is this? Like, what do you mean? She's like, oh, I'm a surrogate. And she explained it to me, and I thought, I could help someone like that, but, like, how do you start something? And at that same time, one of our good friends was going through chemo, and she she was told, like, you're probably not going to be able to carry any of your children. And I thought, I could help you. And she's like, how does it work? I'm like, no idea. Like, I'm not sure. And so we talked about it. We weren't sure if I would, like, get a relationship or some weird attachment to the child. Like, would it cause
Uh-huh.
problems with our friendship? Like, how does this actually work? And so I was like, I got a great idea. I'm going to go help a stranger. I'm going to learn everything. I'm going to find out the whole process, and then we're going to be able to do it for free. Right. So that was how I got into surrogacy. Was I just wanted to help a friend, and I
Wow.
just wanted to do good in the world, because I had felt like such a, like, my heart was so, like, hardened, for the first 20 something years, that I wanted to start, like, putting good out there instead.
I love that your marriage, I mean, you recognize that your heart was hard. How, in
Yeah.
what ways you felt like you were failing your own children? Because
Oh my
man,
gosh.
it's hard to look in that mirror. Boy, I'm telling you what. Um, and
Yeah.
then you guys made the decisions that put your marriage first by
Yeah.
moving. And I mean, you kind of did like all the things right, and they're hard. And so I just applaud that. And then stumbling into this, stumbling
Yeah.
into surrogacy. How does one
Yeah.
do that? But how great. So
Yeah.
you've been a surrogate how many times?
4.
Wow. So I mean, you've been pregnant 6 times. That's a lot on your body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always wanted 6 kids. I thought, like, 6 is the great number. And with surrogacy, I ended up with 6, but I don't have to raise or be financially responsible for 4 of them. Like, I get to be a cool aunt who, like, sends candy and watches them, like, have temper tantrums. And, like, good job, parents. Like, good luck.
Um, you jumped in at some point
Yeah.
with the company.
Yeah.
So you're with Surrogate First.
Yeah.
So I mean, I know from that first conversation with your friend who had cancer and you were her surrogate.
Yeah. No, so this is the crazy part of it. I went and helped the stranger, right, who became the parent I've carried 3 times for. She became
Okay.
a sister. And in our third trimester of the first pregnancy, my friend called me and said, "Hey, I did a round of, I did a frozen embryo transfer, and it's stuck. We're pregnant." And they were one and done people. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do now? I went off and carried for a stranger so I could be your surrogate. And so we completed that first journey. She gave birth to her beautiful baby, who is like the apple of their eye. And my intended mom said, "Hey, would you carry again for me?" And I thought, oh, my friend doesn't need me. Like, and you're not crazy. Like, this was a very pleasant experience. So, yeah, I will, but I don't want to go with that agency. It's an amazing agency. They were very professional, but like, I came from like Hawaii where we're community. We break bread. We are family. Like, you make a friend, they're family now. And I didn't feel that. And I think surrogacy is so intimate that I wanted to have those feelings. Like, I didn't do it for the compensation. I did it because I wanted the experience. I wanted to feel those relationships and build those memories. And so she said, "That's okay. I understand." We had a friend. She had a friend who was an IVF concierge, and I met with her. And shortly after that, I became her assistant. And she said, "Okay, yeah, I can kind of oversee your guys' case." And then that year, we opened Surrogate First.
Oh, nice. So
Yeah,
you took a process and wanted to make it better. I
I did.
so I'm a doula here in Washoe County, and one of my clients is a surrogate. She's due in August of 2024. So
Yeah,
when I got the email asking about interviewing you, I forwarded it to her and I was like, "What do you think?" And she said, so I want to talk about this because I know
yeah,
that you started something. She said, while surrogacy is awesome, companies that embezzle from IPs and surrogates have been an
yes,
issue. She said EWS is no longer or closing down. The owner is meant to be arrested. This was a couple months ago. She
yeah,
has over $1 million of combined embezzlement. And I'm going to put that in the show notes for your episode because it's information. So you took a surrogacy company's process and wanted to make it more community. You wanted to make it
yeah,
better. You went through it and you were like, no, we can take more community raises a child, more community living, which is way better to raise your kids usually. And you wanted to bring that into the surrogacy business. And then on a side note, there was all this other stuff like how awful that families who can't have children and women who are willing to be surrogates are getting money stolen from them. That just made me furious when I heard it. Can you
yeah.
talk to me about the companies and how things work and how you really wanted to set yourself apart?
Yeah, for one, with that whole incident, I've grown a friend with that surrogate. That was one of the major victims. Um, it's unfortunate that people go through that. And so there's an organization called Seeds Ethics,
Mm,
and
yep.
they create standards for the surrogacy field. I am a volunteer with them. One, because I'm a rule follower. I like rules. I like black and white. You know, you don't have to worry about sometimes the gray areas, and there's always gray. And
Yep.
some of the things that are recommended are to protect surrogates and parents. Personally, in our agency, something that we live by is that we have a third party escrow.
Mm,
What a third party escrow means is that that money doesn't come into us. It goes directly to the escrow to fully fund it for the surrogate. And we require a fully funded escrow before pregnancy. So that means her compensations, potential complications, attorney bills, traveling, all of that money is in there before she even gets pregnant. And everyone is able to see see the balance. The parents can see receipts that go in, monies that go out. They have the support of a company. We also don't have any in-house attorneys, so we try to set that up too, so that way parents, if there was an issue with us, if we failed them, if we did something unethical, they could be able to care, to be protected by an attorney, not someone that we
hmm.
hired.
Okay.
Um, those are definitely
Mm,
recommended. Um, with issues like the embezzlement, that particular case supposedly, because nothing has been charged,
mhm.
I believe is closer to 2.5 with loans and lenders and cloud funding. There's a couple lawsuits with that. And then there's the parents. I'm currently working with a set of intended parents that lost their agency fee, and I'm trying to get them a surrogate as quick as possible so that at least we can recover some of the time lost. I think being
Wow,
part of this
Ashley.
surrogacy field, you have to help the community. If we don't care for and police our own community, we're going to get shut down like other countries. Like the world watches the US and what we do with surrogacy, and that sets the tone for the entire world. And I don't think people realize that, you know. And so these agencies that are greedy and out for their own, you know, are ruining and risking that when there are so many babies born through surrogacy and so much change and and families and pain is resolved. I mean, I know for myself, my intended mother had 5 years of failed IVF.
Oh, right. I mean, I saw because when before our interview, when I cyber stalk you,
Yeah,
you talk a lot about seeds on your TikTok and Instagram. We have those links in the show
yeah,
notes. But I'm really glad that we address that because it's such a scary, expensive, emotionally charged topic. You're talking about infertility already, and then surrogacy as a secondary way to have children that are
yeah,
genetically yours. And I was just blown away when Linda reached out to me, and then I talked to my friend who's a surrogate for her second time and has
yeah,
loved the experience. I mean, she's had a really great experience, but she's like, you have to be careful. And so I
yes,
appreciate you addressing that. You
yeah,
you said you had 3 babies for 1 surrogate, and then but you've been a surrogate 4 times. I want you to tell me about that, and I want to
yeah,
know, what are you gonna do it again, and the toll it takes on your body and your family.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I am a big mental health,
Mhm.
supporter. And so during all of the surrogacies, I do see someone on a regular basis. And at the end, we do family sessions where I'm sorry, where we would, our whole family, we want to make sure that we are connecting, that everyone's had closure with the deliveries. I set my surrogacies up differently. So it is required for me that the parents be open to a relationship, that they be open to my
Mm,
children meeting them and the baby. Um, I also have a very unique experience because my intended mother with our first surrogacy actually stayed with me for a week after we delivered because she was in a foreign country. I didn't want her getting taken advantage of by the hotels or taxi staff. She didn't speak very much English, and her husband wasn't able to come because I went into labor 4 weeks early due to a fender bender. Um, yeah, yeah. So I delivered at 36 weeks, the first baby,
mm,
and so she wasn't ready for that. um, Part of that story, if you ever, get to see more of my story, is that after 5 years of failed IVF during this process, she got pregnant naturally. And so she was 8 months pregnant or 7.5 months pregnant when I delivered. Yeah. After never being able to carry
oh,
to term. So here's this woman who's in her third trimester, her surrogate gets, fender benders and jumbles up baby. And so we're delivering. And she doesn't drive in the US and she's in California because we had 4 more weeks to go. And so we're trying to get her to the hospital. I'm in delivery and out comes this 6 pound, 13 ounce, no oxygen needed baby. It was just amazing. But we had agreed as a surrogate. I wanted to make sure we were on the same page. Part of that was if the parents weren't there, I didn't want that baby going into the nursery. He had heard my voice. My job was to give him to his parents. I didn't want him to feel lonely. As that baby comes out, they're like, "What is this world? Put me back in where it's nice and cozy." And I
mhm.
didn't want him to be going through all of that as a newborn without mom. And so, we wanted to make sure he was safe. During that aspect of it, we had some issues with the hospital, and that's where like my advocacy for delivery with surrogacy and and understanding and making sure that like I've been the 24/7 line at my agency for the last almost 6 years because I never want anyone to feel alone. So I get calls at 3 in the morning. I get calls at 1 in the morning, but I never wanted someone to feel alone and panicking because the hospital said, no, 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 we're going to treat this differently. You can't have this baby in your room. And I'm like, but all the documentation is in the office. They're like, oh, the social worker went home for the weekend. I'm like, so I slept after I pushed that baby out on a chair in the NICU because they didn't have a nursery. Because I was like, he's not going to be alone. Like, I didn't get this far to get him to have trauma as a baby. And so, we did that. And then she made it up the next morning. We got released from the hospital the next day. And then she lived with us for a week while we pumped and nursed and helped her learn how to care for a newborn. And then she did that the next 2 times. So we've lived together every time I've had a baby.
That's amazing. That is
Yeah.
amazing. And then
Yeah.
you were a surrogate one more time for someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. That was COVID 2020. And there was a lot of fear. And the parents, it was a hard one. Um, I wanted to retire after that one. And I told my husband I was done. Like, that one felt icky. I didn't feel the beautiful, warm effects of it. Um, so basically, what happened with them was they had one embryo, we had one shot. And this little guy, we named him Jonah as a nickname, because he was such a delayed starter. Like, we got our first HCG and he was like 18 or 19, and the cutoff was 18 for like the levels for HCG pregnancy hormone. Then 2 days later, we go back and it barely doubled. And the doctor's like, this is not going to be viable. I'm like, can we just wait till the weekend? Like, maybe he's just a late bloomer. And he just continued. When we did heartbeat confirmations, he measured 2 days behind. So he must have just implanted late. And
Mm.
and so there was just thing after thing with him. But then COVID hits, right? And I deliver July, I think, 7th, 2020. And the parents are, I'm 38 and a half weeks pregnant. He has stopped moving. He's like lowered, decelled fetal movement. We're doing those fetal, tests, the non-stress test or whatever
Mm-hmm.
to check if he's okay. And I looked at my doctor and he looked at me and I was like, I'm worried. And he's like, he's fully baked. Let's just get him out, because if there's something wrong, it's easier to take care of it outside of the womb than you go into an emergency C-section. But unfortunately, the parents did not speak English. They didn't understand. And so on their end, there was a lot of fear. One, their baby was coming early. They didn't understand 38 and a half weeks was okay. They were in Cambodia because in order to get from China to the US, you had to quarantine in a couple different countries for a week or two. And so they're 4 days away from getting there, and their baby's going to be
Okay.
born. It's their only shot. It was just they got very aggressive, very angry, threatening, and we had to cut off contact until delivery. I wanted to make sure they could still see the baby in the video and everything like that. So my husband called them, videoed them, but we ended up not talking, other than when they needed something like how to fill out a birth certificate. And I felt like, you know, I just felt like it wasn't what I expected. Unfortunately, it was a lesson learned. So I tell people, you're going into surrogacy to grow a family, and if your family grows in the end, it's a blessing. And I had to really live that. Like, I had to, who was I there for? Was it for my own needs, or was I there to truly grow a family? And that's the kind of the hard side of surrogacy is, if you're really in it to help a family grow, then the relationship that I had with the parents at the end shouldn't be my number one, right? Like, that's
Right.
a bummer. But that's what I learned. It was a hard lesson because I thought I'd be besties with everyone. Like, who wouldn't want to be a bestie and like have fun? And nope, it went bad. We ended up firing them during my labor. So that's bad.
Wow. You've decided not to do surrogacy anymore, but now you are running the company and helping other people, which is still growing families. And wow, I mean,
Yeah.
how this one conversation at church with this woman who was like, it's not mine. However many years later, here you
Yeah.
are. Who would have ever thought? Um, I like
Yeah.
to end on a really high
Yes.
note. I would love for your high note, because I have a mom who's a surrogate and I've worked with
Yes.
adoptions and surrogacy before several times, but I want your perspective on, because it's not just me as a doula, like what can
Yeah.
the people that are supporting the surrogate do to make that process easier for them? And I think that would be kind of a
Yeah.
good place to end.
I think that's amazing. Yeah. So, as a support system, one, realizing that when we deliver, we are pumped with hormones. We may
Yeah.
be crying, but to just assume that we're crying because the baby is gone and ripped from our arms it's not respectful. We don't want that child. We had a surrogacy because we don't want any more children of our own. We're okay with that. we're pumped with hormones. We're going to cry for no reason. The other side of it is that as a surrogate, I loved, and I look back and I'm thankful for every journey. And I was a type A personality. And so sometimes people, when you get to the end, it's like being fired from a job you're really good at. We're going to mourn the end of that season, not the baby, not, oh, there's a hole in our heart. It's, we're mourning this season that we loved being surrogates. I loved being a surrogate. I loved every part of it. I loved watching the families get excited and their families being complete or growing. And, and I love labor and delivery, believe it or not. I think it's beautiful what the human body can do. I've had the six births. They were all vaginal births. I've got to experience them without any epidurals and just my body pushing that child out on its own. So like all of that is beautiful, but it's still a season that's ending, and it's okay to be sad about that. And it's okay to sit in that for a minute. And then, for us to be able to get back to our lives. So I would say for her, just supporting her and understanding, like, maybe sometimes the surface emotion, it's not what others who have never been through surrogacy think about it. There's a whole community, and I'm actually launching a fourth trimester for the entire surrogacy community. This will be coming out next
Mm.
week. It's free to everyone. It's going to have mental health classes, so support, a health and wellness program, a whole group of surrogates that are in their postpartum era, the fourth
Mhm.
trimester, for love and compassion and just being sisters. No matter if you're independent with an agency, it doesn't matter. Like, there's a whole community of women that are ready to support surrogate, no matter where they're at in their journey. And so I think just understanding, like, reach out to those communities, and for family members to understand, like, check it out. we're not we're not crazy. Like, this is a beautiful thing that we're doing.
The one thing that I think about is how, because family members don't
Yeah.
necessarily do this, but as a doula, I have postpartum appointments. I'm making sure breastfeeding goes well and the mom is healing. And those things are all still happening to your body,
Yes.
even though there's
Yes.
not a baby present. And so I always think like supporting the mom's physical recovery as well as the emotional recovery, right? And do they want to pump and donate? Do they not necessarily to the baby if the
Yeah.
parents don't want it, but like just in general, do they want to do that? How do you wean them off of that? Like there are big things that you have to decide and talk about. It's not about handing the baby over and then being like, bye. Like
Yeah.
that postpartum mom's journey is pretty massive. So
Yeah. And I've
yeah.
always felt bad,
Mm.
my first two journeys, asking family and friends for help, because I was like, well, I don't have the baby at home, right? But like, for family and friends, if you would just offer to bring a meal, like, treat it like she's just given birth, even if the baby's not there, it would be such a help, because
Yeah.
we are. And I hated asking for help because I felt like I signed up for it. So why should I ask people for help? But my whole support system was just waiting for me to, like, ask, and they wanted to help because they love me, not because
Mhm.
of the actual act of bringing home a baby, but because they loved Ashley. They wanted to be able to help and bring food. They just didn't know if it was acceptable. And so, as family, just bring the meal over, like, drop it at the doorstep, order it, like, help with laundry. We're still healing.
Yeah. Ashley, thank you so much for
Yeah.
being on and sharing. What a pleasure.
Oh, I'm so
Mm.
sorry. I get rambling.
Oh,
I
I
need to
love
get
it. I
but
love
thank you
it.
for
Thank
having
you.
me. I